Welcome to the Clean Slate Podcast, brought to you by CleaRank.com. We're going to be taking a close look at an online broker today
Okay.
called Plexytrade.
Sounds good.
We've put them through the CleaRank Clear Score analysis,
Mm-hmm.
and we're going to be talking about what we found and what that might mean if you're thinking about using their services. So I think probably the most important thing to start with is that they received the lowest possible Clear score.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, 0.1 out of 5.
Yikes.
Yeah, there are a lot of reasons why. And we're going to go through all of them. But let's start with their regulatory status, or I guess lack thereof would be a better way to put it.
Okay.
So they say they're registered in St. Lucia, and they give an address in Montenegro, which, on the surface, I guess, sounds okay.
Yeah, sounds plausible enough, sure.
But when CleaRank did the audit, we found that they are not registered with the St. Lucia Financial Services Authority, the FSRA, and they're also not registered with Montenegro's central bank.
That's interesting.
Yeah, so there's a bit of a discrepancy there. And, St. Lucia has a bit of a history, doesn't it?
It does.
As a place where some of the less regulated brokers end up.
It's kind of known as a tax haven, right?
Right. And so it's kind of jurisdiction where brokers can operate without being as closely watched.
Yeah, so seeing them basing that, there should probably be a little bit of a red flag for you to look into it further. And Montenegro, while it's not necessarily a tax haven in the same way, its financial oversight isn't as strong as you would expect from a well-respected jurisdiction.
And of course, maybe even more importantly, they have no licenses from any of the Tier 1 regulators. We're talking about the FCA, ASIC, the CFTC.
The big ones.
Yeah, so what does that actually mean for a trader if they don't have these licenses?
Well, basically, it means that there's no one really looking out for the client. There's no one making sure that the broker is acting fairly. There's no client protection.
Okay, so no real accountability.
Right, exactly.
Let's move on to their activity in the U.S. So their website actually has a disclaimer that says they don't solicit U.S. clients and they don't operate in restricted areas.
So it sounds like they're trying to, at least on paper,
Right, at least in what they say.
say that they're compliant.
Yeah, but then we took a look at their website traffic using our refs. And according to that data, 99.8% of their organic traffic comes from the United States.
Oh, wow. So almost all of it.
Yeah. And of course, this is a country where you absolutely have to have the proper licenses from the CFTC and the NFA.
It's not optional.
Right. It's not optional at all. And usually, legitimate brokers will actually block users from certain countries.
Right. They'll use IP blocking or something to make sure they're not breaking any rules.
Right. So the fact that they're not doing that and that they are attracting so many U.S. traders, I mean, what do you make of that?
Well, it definitely seems like they're deliberately trying to work around the regulations. And it makes you wonder if they're being honest about anything else they're saying.
Yeah, and that makes me think about their bonuses.
Oh,
They offer a 120% cash bonus and a FlexiPower 100% tradable bonus.
Those sound a little too good to be true, don't they?
Yeah, and you mentioned churn and burn schemes, I think.
They did.
What exactly is a churn and burn scheme in this context?
So basically, it's when a broker encourages their clients to trade a lot and lose money quickly.
And how does that benefit them?
Well, they make money off of commissions and fees, and they don't really care if the client is making money or not.
Right, and these bonuses, how do they play into that?
Well, those big bonuses are really tempting, especially for new traders. They get people to deposit money and start trading, but the terms and conditions are usually really hard to meet.
So it's almost like a trick to get people's money stuck in there.
Right. It's very difficult to withdraw anything
Right.
until you've traded a huge amount, like a ridiculous amount. So most people end up losing a lot of money trying to meet those requirements.
Now, another thing that's a little concerning is that Plexytrade acquired another broker called LQDFX in 2024.
LQDFX, that name rings a bell.
Yeah, and we did some research on them. And let's just say they have a colorful history.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, for example, the CFTC actually blacklisted them
Real?
for illegally targeting U.S. traders.
That's not good.
Yeah, and they're also on the CFTC's RED list,
The red list. Wow.
which is basically a list of companies that have been involved in some kind of fraudulent activity, or they have serious regulatory problems.
So this isn't just some minor infraction. This is serious stuff.
Exactly. And it's not just the U.S. The FCA in the U.K. also issued a warning about them.
So they've been in trouble in multiple countries.
Yeah, they were targeting people in the U.K. without authorization.
So they seem to have a pattern of just ignoring the rules wherever they go.
Yeah, and there were all these reports from LQDFX clients
Oh no, what happened?
about them refusing to return funds, about manipulated spreads.
That sounds really bad.
Yeah, fake licenses, locked accounts, people not being able to withdraw their bonuses, trades being reversed after they became profitable for the client.
Wow, that's awful.
Yeah, and so the fact that Plexytrade bought this company, I mean, doesn't that make you a little bit worried that they might be continuing these same practices?
It definitely doesn't inspire confidence, does it? It seems like they might just be trying to take over LQDFX's clients and keep doing the same shady things, but under a different name.
Yeah, let's talk about how they handle deposits and withdrawals.
Okay.
They only offer cryptocurrency payment options.
Really? That's it?
Yeah, so that's through Confirmo, which is a crypto payment gateway, and then direct crypto deposits like Bitcoin, Ethereum, things like that.
Mm-hmm.
Why is that a concern?
Well, while cryptocurrency is perfectly legitimate, when it's the only way a broker lets you pay, it's a big red flag, especially if they're unregulated like Plexytrade.
So what are they trying to hide?
Well, it makes it much harder to trace the money. If something goes wrong, it's very difficult to get your money back.
Because it's all anonymous?
Right. And unlike with a bank or credit card, there's no real way to dispute the charges.
Okay, so moving on to their trading platforms. They do offer MetaTrader 4 and 5.
Okay, those are pretty popular platforms.
Right, they're generally well regarded. But there's a catch.
What's that?
Well, the company that makes them, MetaQuotes, they've been cracking down on brokers who target U.S. clients without a license. And remember, almost all of Plexytrade's traffic is coming from the U.S.
Right, so they're probably going to lose access to those platforms at some point.
Exactly. So then they're left with TradeLocker, which is another platform they offer.
TradeLocker? Haven't heard much about them.
Yeah, and there's a reason for that. It's kind of infamous for being the platform of choice for a lot of these unregulated brokers.
Oh, so it's not exactly a sign of quality then.
No, it's not really. It seems like it's easier to manipulate and there's less oversight.
And you said no regulated brokers use it?
Right, none of the reputable brokers use it. And it's not as good as MetaTrader in terms of the tools and the stability and just overall,
It's just not as advanced.
Yeah. Now let's talk about the leverage they offer.
Okay.
They advertise up to 1.2 thousand zeros leverage.
Wow, that's a lot.
It's a lot, especially when you compare it to what's allowed in regulated markets.
Yeah, like in the U.S., it's usually capped at 1.50.
Right. In Australia, it's 1.30.
So 1.2 thousand is just way higher than what's considered safe.
And, I mean, high leverage can be good in theory. It can amplify your profits.
Yeah, but it amplifies your losses too.
Right. So it's extremely risky, especially for inexperienced traders.
It can wipe out your account really fast.
Yeah. And the broker often benefits from that, especially in an unregulated environment.
Because they get to keep the money that you lost.
Right. And you also mentioned that regulators like the FCA have actually banned these kinds of bonuses that Plexytrade offers.
They have, yeah.
Why is that?
Well, because they're basically predatory. The trading volume requirements are just impossible for most people to meet.
Like, what kind of requirements are we talking about?
Well, at Plexytrade, you have to trade 100,000 units, which is like $10 million worth of trading.
Before you can even withdraw your bonus.
Right, or even sometimes your initial deposit.
So it's a way to keep people trading and losing money.
Yeah, it encourages risky behavior.
Yeah.
And keeps the money on their platform.
So earlier you mentioned the CleaRank breakdown, and you said that Plexytrade got a 0.1 out of 5.
Yeah, pretty dismal, isn't it?
Yeah, can you break that down a little bit?
Sure. So each component of the score reflects a different area of concern. So for regulation, they got a 0.1, which makes sense because they're not regulated by anyone reputable.
Right.
Trade execution also got a low score, 0.3, because of their connection to LQDFX and their use of the TradeLocker platform.
Okay.
Withdrawal speed also got a 0.1, which is not surprising given all the reports we saw about LQDFX and the fact that they only use crypto.
That makes sense.
Customer support got a 0.1 as well, which suggests that if you have a problem, you're probably not going to get much help.
Right.
And finally, reputation got a 0.1, mostly because of the LQDFX acquisition and all the other red flags we've talked about.
So for anyone who might already be using Plexytrade, what would you recommend they do?
Well, first of all, I would say document everything. Save all your trade history, any proof of deposits and withdrawals, any communication you've had with them, emails, chat logs, even phone call recordings if you have them.
And who should they report this to?
Well, in the U.S., you should definitely file a complaint with the CFTC and the NFA. You should also consider reporting it to your local law enforcement. And for international traders, you should report it to the relevant authorities in your country.
Okay, and what about the cryptocurrency deposits? Is there any way to trace those?
It's tricky, but if you sent the crypto to an exchange that has KYC procedures, then it might be possible to trace it with the help of blockchain forensics.
Blockchain forensics, what is that?
It's basically a way to track the movement of cryptocurrency.
Yeah.
There are companies that specialize in this, like Chainalysis.
So it's not a guarantee, but it's worth looking into.
Exactly.
You also mentioned something about legal action, specifically subpoenaing TradeLocker.
Yes.
Can you explain that a little more?
Sure. So depending on the laws in your country and how much money is involved, it might be possible to sue them and force TradeLocker to hand over information.
What kind of information?
Things like who owns Plexytrade and any KYC information they have on their users.
So that could help identify the people behind it.
Right.
And finally, you mentioned trying to make partial withdrawals.
Yeah, sometimes these brokers will let you withdraw small amounts at first, just to build trust. So you could try saying that you're thinking about depositing more money and see if they'll let you withdraw some of what you already have.
It's risky, but it might work.
It's a possibility.
Okay, so to sum it all up, what's our final verdict on Plexytrade?
Well, I think it's pretty clear that this is a high-risk, unregulated broker, and there are just too many red flags to ignore.
Like what?
Well, they're not regulated by anyone reputable. They're targeting U.S. clients without a license. They acquired a company that was blacklisted by the CFTC. They only use crypto for payments. They use a shady trading platform. They offer crazy high leverage. And they have these predatory bonuses.
And they got the lowest possible clear score, 0.1 out of 5.
Right, which speaks for itself, really.
Yeah, so our advice is clear. Avoid Plexytrade.
Definitely.
It's just not worth the risk. If a financial service is actively trying to hide who regulates them, and they're going after clients in countries where they're not allowed to operate, what else are they willing to cut corners on?
That's a good question, and it's one that every trader should be asking themselves before they trust their money to any broker.
Thanks for listening to the Clean Slate Podcast, brought to you by CleaRank.com. See you next time.